I was 11 years old the summer my parents decided I was old enough to manage. That was the exact phrase my mom used as she stood in the hallway, pulling her suitcase toward the door like it mattered more than I did. "You'll be fine," she said, smiling too brightly. "This trip will teach you responsibility. You're independent now." Then she pressed something into my hand, a single, wrinkled $20 bill. No list, no plan, no neighbor stopping by. No emergency number taped to the fridge, just money and a smile. The front door closed behind her, not loudly, not dramatically, just final. I stood there staring at the bill until my palms started to sweat. "I'll be fine," I whispered to the empty house. Saying it out loud felt safer than admitting the truth. At first, I pretended this was a challenge, something I could win if I was smart enough. I lined up the pantry items on the counter like evidence in a case I didn't want to admit was real. 2 cans I didn't know how to open, half a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter scraped thin, milk that already smelled wrong. That night I ate slowly, counting bites, stretching time, convincing myself hunger was temporary. I even laughed once, quietly, alone in the kitchen, thinking this will make a good story someday. But when the house went silent, really silent, I felt it. The quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt like being watched by something that wouldn't notice if I disappeared. My parents had left an emergency card on the counter. Shiny, official-looking, reassuring. I tried ordering food on my phone. Declined. Again. The card wasn't activated. No PIN, no instructions, just plastic. That's when I understood something they hadn't said out loud. They hadn't planned for anything to go wrong. Now it was just me and that $20. By the 3rd day, hunger wasn't just in my stomach. It was in my head. I got dizzy standing up. My hands shook when I tried to write. I turned the TV on just for noise, any noise, to drown out the creaks of a house that suddenly felt too big. At night, I stopped sleeping in my room. The hallway felt louder after dark. Every sound felt like footsteps that never came. That's when I grabbed my notebook. I didn't plan anything dramatic. I just wrote one word at the top of the page. Proof under it, I wrote. Alone at 11, parents out of the country. $20 left card, doesn't work, no check-ins. I stared at the page longer than I meant to. Writing it down changed something. It stopped feeling like an accident. It started feeling like a decision they had made. That night, I opened my phone camera. My face looked smaller than I expected. My eyes looked tired in a way I didn't recognize. I hesitated. I told myself not to be dramatic. Kids my age survived worse. If I recorded this, it meant admitting something was wrong. But if I didn't, no one would ever know. Day 3, I said quietly. I'm still alone. I swallowed before continuing. The card doesn't work. I ate the last real food yesterday. I paused, my voice dropping. If anyone sees this, it means someone finally asked where I was. I saved the video and locked my phone. Part of me hoped no one would ever see it. Another part of me wanted my parents to be forced to watch it someday, without being able to explain it away. By day 5, I stopped pretending this was temporary. The pantry looked empty in a way that felt accusing, like it was keeping score. I ate dry cereal straight from the box, slowly, carefully. Then I opened my notebook again. Day 5. No call, no text, still alone. I stared at the page, then added one more line I hadn't planned to write. If something happens to me, this proves it wasn't my fault. My chest tightened. That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't about surviving until they came back. This was about what would happen when someone finally noticed. On the 7th day, the doorbell rang. Nobody ever rang our doorbell. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might throw up. I considered hiding, pretending I wasn't home, letting whoever it was go away. Then another thought cut through the fear. What if this is the moment I stop being invisible? I opened the door a crack. A man stood there wearing a jacket with my school's logo stitched on it. "Hi, Lena," he said gently. It took me a second to recognize him without the classroom. It was Mr. Collins, the school counselor. "I've been trying to reach your parents," he said. "They haven't answered. Can I come in?" My instinct was to lie, but my body moved before my brain could stop it. I stepped aside. The house told on me before I could. The empty counter, the sink full of dishes, the silence. "Are your parents at work?" he asked. "They're in Italy," I said. "For how long?" "A month." His face changed. "And who's staying with you?" I wrapped my arms around myself. "Just me." He sat down slowly. "How long have you been alone?" "Almost a week." "Do you have food?" "Money," I laughed, but it didn't sound like laughter. "They left me $20. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "This isn't okay." Not angry, not loud, just true. "There are laws about this," he continued. "This is neglect." Neglect. The word landed heavier than hunger ever had. "Do you want help?" he asked. "Real help." I thought about the notebook, the videos, the empty fridge. "Yes," I said. "But if I say yes, what happens to them?" He didn't lie. "They'll have to answer for their choices." I nodded. "I want them too." As Mr. Collins stepped into the hallway to make a call, I looked down at my notebook again. That word at the top, proof, no longer felt small. It felt dangerous. Because once adults start listening, once questions get asked, once the truth stops being quiet, things don't just get handled. They spiral. And my parents had no idea what was already moving toward them. When Mr. Collins stepped into the hallway to make the call, I didn't follow him. I stayed at the kitchen table, staring at the notebook. For the first time since my parents left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt exposed. I could hear his voice through the wall, low, careful, professional. 11 years old, yes. Unsupervised, no, they're out of the country. Each word landed like it was being written somewhere permanent. I hugged the notebook to my chest, suddenly unsure if I wanted what I'd asked for. Because wanting help is one thing, watching it arrive is another. Mr. Collins came back a few minutes later. "I called a neighbor," he said gently. "And I also contacted child services. Someone will be checking in today." Today, the word made my stomach flip. "They're also going to make sure you eat," he added, like he knew hunger wasn't the part I was afraid of. "What happens when my parents find out?" I asked. He didn't rush to answer. "They will," he said finally, "and they won't like it." That was the first time I understood something clearly. This wasn't a private problem anymore. The knock at the door came an hour later, softer than before. I recognized her immediately. Mrs. Adler, the woman who lived 2 houses down. The one who waved every morning and always smelled like laundry soap. The moment she saw me, her expression changed. Not shock, recognition. "Oh, Lena," she said quietly, "you're so thin." I hated that she noticed, and I hated that she was right. She stepped inside and her eyes moved, not snooping, just observing. The counter, the empty fridge, the single cereal box. She didn't say, "Why didn't you come to me?" She said something worse. "Why did you think you had to do this alone?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how to explain that I thought needing help meant I'd failed some invisible test. Not long after, another car pulled up. This one didn't belong to anyone I knew. A woman stepped out carrying a bag and a clipboard. She introduced herself calmly, like she was visiting a dentist appointment. "I'm Miss Rivera," she said. "I'm here to make sure you're safe." Safe. No one had used that word yet. She walked through the house, not searching, not accusing, just documenting. Her eyes lingered on the fridge longer than anything else. "How long have your parents been gone?" she asked. "A week. And when are they supposed to return?" "In 3 more." She nodded and wrote something down. "Do they call you?" I hesitated. "They sent a picture," I said. "From Paris." Miss Rivera didn't react. She just asked, "And after that?" "They said I was doing great." She wrote again. Mr. Collins nodded toward my notebook. "Lena's been keeping notes." I flinched. I hadn't realized how attached I'd become to it until someone else reached for it. Miss Rivera looked at me, not the notebook. "Is it okay if I read it?" I thought about the word at the top of the page. Proof, I slid it across the table. She read silently. Her expression didn't change much, but her grip on the pen tightened. "These are very clear," she said. "You did the right thing writing them down." No one had ever told me that before. While they talked quietly, I slipped into the kitchen and opened my phone again. I wasn't shaking this time. I filmed the fridge, the table, Miss Rivera's bag resting against the chair. "This is what the house looks like," I whispered, "when someone finally notices." I turned the camera toward myself. "My parents aren't here yet, but other people are." I stopped recording. This one wasn't for proof. It was for them. That night, I didn't sleep at home. Miss Rivera said it carefully, like she was trying not to scare me. "Just for now." Mrs. Adler packed a bag with me. She didn't rush. She didn't act like this was an emergency. That somehow made it feel bigger. As we walked to her house, I looked back at mine. The lights were still off. The door still locked. "This is where they left me," I thought. My phone rang at 2 a.m. The screen lit up with my mother's name. I didn't answer. Mrs. Adler sat beside me. "You don't have to," she said. The phone rang again. Then a message appeared. "Why is someone from Child Services emailing us?" What did you tell them? My chest felt tight. This wasn't worry. This was panic for themselves. The next morning, I answered. "What is going on?" My mother snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I waited for her to ask if I was okay. She didn't. "You embarrassed us," she continued. "People are asking questions." "I was alone," I said quietly. "I was hungry." "You're exaggerating," she said immediately. "We trusted you. You wanted to be treated like an adult." Mrs. Adler leaned closer to the phone. "I'm the neighbor," she said calmly. "Your daughter had almost no food. This isn't about trust. It's about safety." Silence. Then my mother said something I'll never forget. "You should have handled it better." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I said one thing. I did. Then I hung up. Later that day, Miss Rivera came back. "Your parents are returning early," she said. 3 days. Not because they missed me, because they were afraid. "There will be a meeting," she added, "with everyone present." My stomach twisted. But underneath the fear was something else. Relief. They couldn't pretend this away. That night, I lay in a bed that wasn't mine, holding the notebook against my chest. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. But I was also no longer protected by silence. They came home 3 days later. I heard the car before I saw it. Tires on gravel, doors slamming, keys jangling like the house still belonged to them. I was already inside. So were the others. Miss Rivera sat at the kitchen table, a folder open in front of her. Mr. Collins stood near the counter, arms folded, quiet. Mrs. Adler stayed close to me, not touching, just there. The house smelled the same as it always had. That almost made me angry. The front door opened and my mom stepped in first, pulling her suitcase behind her. She stopped cold. Her eyes moved the stranger at the table, the school counselor, the neighbor, then landed on me. "What is this?" she said sharply. "What's everyone doing in my kitchen?" My dad came in behind her, still half smiling, phone in hand. That smile disappeared when he saw the room. "Is something wrong?" he asked too casually. "Why is school involved?" Miss Rivera stood. "Please sit," she said. "We need to talk." My mom didn't sit. She looked straight at me. "Lena," she said, "what did you say to them?" I felt my throat tighten, but my voice didn't. "I told them what happened." My dad let out a short laugh. "Okay," he said. "Let's slow down. She's 11. Kids exaggerate." My mom finally sat, arms crossed. "We left food," she said quickly. "We left money. We trusted her." Miss Rivera slid a paper across the table. "This is the credit card activation record," she said. "It was never activated." My mom barely glanced at it. "That doesn't mean she was starving." Miss Rivera didn't argue. She placed another sheet down. Photographs, the fridge, the pantry, empty shelves that looked worse on paper than they ever had in real life. The clock above the stove clicked loudly between sentences. My dad leaned forward. "She's mature," he said. She wanted responsibility. This trip was supposed to teach her independence. Something twisted in my chest. "You trusted me to survive," I said quietly. "You didn't trust yourselves to be parents." The room went still. My mom's tone softened instantly. "Oh, honey," she said, turning toward me. "You know we didn't mean it like that." She looked at Miss Rivera. "We work very hard. We needed a break." A small laugh. "Parents are allowed to need rest." Miss Rivera nodded once. "Rest doesn't include leaving a child unsupervised for weeks." My mom's jaw tightened. "So now we're criminals?" No one answered. Miss Rivera turned to me. "Lena," she said gently, "are you comfortable showing them what you recorded?" My hands felt cold as I picked up my phone. I pressed play. My face filled the room. Smaller, thinner, tired. "Day 3, my past self said. "I'm still alone." The video panned across the kitchen. No one spoke. The clock kept ticking. My mom stood abruptly. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real." My dad stared at the screen, jaw tight. Miss Rivera paused the video. "This documentation," she said, "combined with school records and neighbor testimony, meets the criteria for neglect." My mom turned to me, eyes sharp now. "Why didn't you call us?" she demanded. "Why didn't you say you were struggling?" I swallowed. "You told me this trip would teach me responsibility." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned back to Miss Rivera. "This is being blown out of proportion," she snapped. "She likes attention. She's dramatic." Mrs. Adler spoke calmly. "She was dizzy from hunger," she said. "She didn't come to me because she didn't want to disappoint you." That's when my mom broke. "We didn't think it would be like this," she said, voice cracking. "We didn't think." "That's the problem," I said. Everyone looked at me. "You didn't think about me." Silence. My dad rubbed his face with both hands. "What happens now?" he asked. Miss Rivera closed the folder. "For now," she said, "Lena will remain in temporary placement." My mom stood so fast her chair scraped loudly. "You're taking our child?" "I'm keeping her safe," Miss Rivera replied. My mom turned to me, tears spilling. "Tell them you want to come home," she pleaded. "We can fix this." I thought about the nights alone, the empty fridge, the silence. "I want to be safe," I said. Her face collapsed. We didn't wait for them to leave. Mrs. Adler walked with me to the door. Behind us, my mom sobbed. I didn't turn around. Not because I didn't care, but because turning back had never protected me before. That night, lying in a room that wasn't mine, I understood something clearly. My parents hadn't lost control because of the authorities. They lost it because the truth was louder than their version of events. The first thing that changed wasn't how people spoke to me. It was how they spoke around me. At school, my name wasn't said the same way anymore. Teachers paused before saying it. Students whispered it like it carried weight. I noticed doors closing softly after I passed. The counselor's office light stayed on longer than usual. It wasn't gossip yet. It was recognition. Mrs. Adler walked me to school every morning, not because I needed her to, because it sent a message. At pickup, parents glanced at her, then at me. Some smiled too brightly. Some avoided eye contact completely. I learned quickly that adults don't ask questions when answers make them uncomfortable. They choose alignment instead. I sat in a small room with beige walls and posters about resilience. A woman I didn't know asked careful questions. "How long were you alone? Did you feel unsafe? Did you know who to call?" Each answer was written down. Neatly, permanently. I realized something then. My life had become a file. My mom didn't call me. She emailed the school, then the district, then the principal. Her tone was polite, concerned, professional. She asked for meetings, clarifications, corrections. My dad called a lawyer before he called me. That detail traveled. Adults talk, especially when they're nervous. At school events, my parents' names were suddenly said with qualifiers. "Oh, those parents." People remembered things retroactively. Times I hadn't shown up to parties, times I'd left early, times they'd said I was very independent. Independence stopped sounding impressive. It started sounding suspicious. Living with Mrs. Adler meant routines. Packed lunches, homework at the table, lights off at a normal time. It also meant being seen. Neighbors waved now, too deliberately. I became the girl everyone was careful around. No one asked what happened. They already knew enough. The email came on a Tuesday afternoon. Not to me, to the school, to the district, to an address labeled Compliance Review Unit. Mrs. Adler didn't read it out loud. She just said, "They've initiated a formal review." Not an investigation. A review, that word landed differently. It meant timelines, mandatory steps, automatic follow-ups. It meant no one could quietly decide this was resolved. I didn't feel scared. I felt something close to final. A teacher pulled Mrs. Adler aside. Quiet voice, closed door. "She's doing well," she said about me, then paused. "And there will be policy changes moving forward." Policies, that word again. Not about my parents specifically, about everyone. That's when I understood this wasn't reversible. My parents try a different strategy they stopped denying. They started reframing. She misunderstood. She's sensitive. She didn't mean for this to go so far. That phrase spread quickly. Go so far, as if neglect had a reasonable stopping point. The community responds without announcement. No one yelled at them. No one confronted them, which was worse. Invitations stopped. Playdates vanished. Smiles became thin. My parents weren't being attacked. They were being quietly excluded. I hear about things I'm not supposed to. Adults forget kids are everywhere. In hallways, in cars, on the stairs. She left her alone. How did no one notice? Can you imagine? Every sentence ended with disbelief, not outrage. Disbelief is colder. The second meeting, this one, included more people, more papers, more calm voices. My parents sat closer together this time, not touching. Miss Rivera spoke, measured, neutral. "The review is ongoing," she said. "There are determinations that no longer involve discretion." My dad asked about timelines, control again, different shape, same instinct. I'm not the focus, and that's the point. No one asked me to speak. I was offered water, a blanket, silence. I realized something important then. This wasn't about my feelings anymore. It was about accountability. Reputation moves faster than truth. By the end of the week, people who had never met me knew my name. Not my face. Not my voice, just the outline of what happened. And once a story leaves your control, it doesn't come back cleaner. It comes back sharper. My parents' house feels different now. I went once. Supervised. The fridge was full. Almost aggressively so. Notes on containers, labels, proof of effort. The house was performing, and everyone could tell. Adults ask the wrong question. People stopped asking, "Is Lena okay?" They started asking, "What's going to happen to them?" That's when I knew something irreversible had shifted. Concern had turned into consequence. My parents start losing certainty. Their emails became longer, more emotional, less confident. They stopped saying misunderstanding. They started saying mistakes, but they still didn't say my name much. I understand something quietly. What scared them wasn't punishment. It was visibility, being known differently, being remembered for the wrong reason. That kind of stain doesn't wash out. It settles. The system keeps moving. Reviews don't announce themselves. They don't threaten. They just continue. Forms, interviews, follow-ups. Time does the work. And I'm no longer alone in this. Teachers check in. Neighbors wave. Adults speak carefully around me. I am not invisible anymore. I am documented, witnessed, believed. I used to think exposure was the hardest part. I was wrong. The ending didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, paper-sized pieces. The system finishes quietly. The first letter came to the school. The second went to the district. The third was sent somewhere my parents couldn't intercept. Each one sounded calm, measured, final. No one read them out loud in front of me. Adults don't do that when something is decided. They summarize. Decisions don't look like punishment. No one was arrested. No one yelled. There were no dramatic confrontations, just changes, permanent ones. My living situation becomes official temporary placement stopped being called temporary. Schedules were formalized. Transportation was arranged. Signatures replaced conversations. I was no longer staying with Mrs. Adler. I was placed. That word felt heavier, but steadier. The school adjusts without asking my file changed status. That mattered more than anyone admitted. Teachers were briefed. Accommodations were documented. I didn't have to explain myself anymore. The explanation had already been accepted. My parents learn what losing control actually feels like. They weren't asked what they wanted. They were informed. Emails became notifications. Meetings became updates. They still tried to negotiate. But negotiation only works when discretion exists. This time, it didn't. The lawyer stops promising things. My dad's tone changed. Less confidence, more questions, fewer guarantees. Even professionals know when a process is finished. They just stop saying it out loud. The house stops performing. I visited once more. Supervised. The fridge was still full, but the notes were gone. No one was trying to prove anything anymore. That told me everything. People start talking about something else slowly. The community moved on. Not because it was resolved, but because outcomes are less interesting than scandals. The story stopped growing. It settled, like dust. What stayed with them didn't leave. My parents were still invited places, but not trusted the same way. People watched more closely, listened differently, asked quieter questions. That kind of change doesn't reverse, it embeds. I'm asked one last question. A woman I'd never met before sat across from me, clipboard on her lap. "Do you feel safe now?" she asked. I thought about it carefully. "Yes," I said. She checked a box. That box mattered more than anything else that had been said this year. I don't feel victorious. That surprised me. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, just space, and quiet, and the absence of fear. My parents send one final message. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't anger. It was procedural. They asked about schedules, rules, boundaries. The language of people who understand the decision is final. I understand something at last. They didn't lose me because they left. They lost me because the system noticed. And once something is noticed at that level, it doesn't unsee. My name becomes normal again. Teachers say it without pausing. Students stop whispering it. I'm no longer that girl. I'm just Lena. That's the quietest victory of all. Safety is boring, and that's the point. Dinner happens at the same time. Lights go off when they should. Someone checks the fridge without making a show of it. Nothing feels cinematic. Nothing feels earned. It just feels stable. The file is closed, not erased. Closed, which means it can be opened again, if it ever needs to be. That knowledge doesn't scare me. It protects me. I look back once, just once, not at my parents, at the version of me who counted bites, who recorded herself because silence felt dangerous. She doesn't feel far away, but she doesn't feel current either. This is how it ends, not with forgiveness, not with revenge, but with a child no longer required to survive alone. Some people think justice is loud. It isn't. It's quiet paperwork, steady decisions, and outcomes that don't care how sorry anyone feels. And once those outcomes arrive, they don't need an ending. They just continue.